Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about grief after a narcissistic relationship. So I really wanted to highlight in here that grief can be very complex after a narcissistic relationship because there are so many moving pieces to what you're actually grieving. When we go through a typical breakup, we're usually grieving the unmet needs that person was bringing into our lives and the traits that they brought into our lives and brought out in us, because we know our subconscious mind attaches to traits of another person for trait variety purposes, right? Like dating way back, if you were really strong and someone else is really smart and you're trying to survive and you pair up and you attach to those traits in somebody else, you have a greater chance of surviving. So we know that these are like very typical things that we grieve after a breakup, and also this sort of needing to reestablish our sense of self in a new way as we enter into this like new season, and we can have these core wounds that come up. That's its own whole separate topic. I've got a lot of content about that on this channel if you want to do a deep dive. And there's also the How to Heal from a Breakup course you can check out for free for 7 days. The link, it will be down below. But, that's a typical breakup. And it's fairly easy to move through a lot more efficiently when we know the mechanics of what's actually plaguing us. But with a narcissistic relationship, there are some other really important parts to grieve beyond just like needs and traits and core wounds that get activated. And so what I've done here in this video for you today is outlined 8 major components of grieving after a narcissistic relationship that have a major impact on grief, and that are also really important to deal with from the perspective of complex grief, things that are not so simple and linear to deal with and that we're not necessarily all exposed to in our everyday lives. So I'm going to go through 8 major components in here. If you want to do a deep dive as well, I've got a whole course about overcoming narcissistic abuse. And you can check both of those, the How to Heal from a Breakup course and overcoming NPD abuse, using the link below. But we're going to go through 8 major components. And what I suggest you do is take out from here the major components that are like strongest to you, most evident for you, that you really realize you may not have targeted yet in your healing process, because usually there's a few that go overlooked because unless we really specifically outline what it is that we need to heal from, it can be hard to heal those exact things. So number one of the biggest things that the mind is often grieving subconsciously after a narcissistic relationship is what could have been. And the reason for this is the mind gets its needs met in the present moment. And when it can't, it gets its needs met in fantasies about the future or memories from the past. And when you go through a love bombing phase with a narcissist, well, one of the first things that happens is that creates imprints. Anything with repetition that creates a strong emotional response imprints the subconscious mind. And so if you look, for example, at somebody's, and I'll say like a quick trigger warning, but let's say we have somebody who's an alcoholic and their relationship is to be addicted to alcohol. You can have, let's pretend Bob, right, is going through alcohol addiction, and Bob can have his first sip of alcohol at 20 years old and have all this euphoria, right? And alcohol can meet certain needs to escape or to lower inhibitions and to sort of calm his internal dialogue that might be really disruptive and negative. And, he has this experience. That experience imprints the subconscious mind, right? When there's a lot of strong emotion that comes from it, he may have a really positive time his first time drinking and, meet all these people and develop these friendships and all these things. So his subconscious gets really imprinted. And then we can fast forward his life, 40 years, let's say. And 40 years later, Tom's relationship, or I think we said Bob's relationship to alcohol might be that he lost so many jobs, lost his family, doesn't have custody of his children, has been in DUIs, near-death experiences, and just been through so much suffering because of his relationship to alcohol. And yet those imprints are so strong that until they are targeted subconsciously and specifically, he keeps going back because he's chasing those original imprints. And until we reprogram imprints, we can't change the fact that our conscious mind knows better. Our conscious mind says, alcohol is so bad, it's hurting me, it's ruined my life countless times over, but our subconscious mind is still addicted to the imprints. And we'll go back because it projects, but that feeling of alcohol, those original associations that were built in are what the subconscious mind continues to chase. So anyways, that's its own separate topic. But the reason I'm sharing this with you is because until we learn how to target those imprints, love bombing from a narcissistic relationship has the same impact on the mind. It creates these extremely strong imprints laced with tons of emotion, tons of like neurochemical experiences like oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, phenylethylamine, all these neurochemicals when we go through the experience of love bombing, and we get addicted to those imprints themselves. So you are grieving when you're grieving a narcissistic relationship and a breakup, you're grieving the addiction to those imprints that have to be targeted specifically. And that really comes into our next two parts, which is similar to healing from a normal breakup, but it's the needs that were met. It's those really specific needs that were met by the narcissistic individual that usually you have a barren relationship with, and the relationship to yourself at a subconscious level. So you may find, for example, that you didn't get those needs met in childhood. Nobody really met those needs in your life too much or too profoundly, or perhaps you just don't have a lot of people meeting those needs in your life currently or recently. And so when the narcissistic person came along, your subconscious mind lights up, right? Your brain's like, wow, like these needs are met. And these needs from a narcissist are often things like to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel noticed, wanted, valued, to feel special or significant, to feel protected, to feel safe. And a lot of these different dynamics, I mean, there's many more, but those are some common ones just off the top of my head. And a lot of these things are quite paradoxical, right? Because the love bombing phase will give you those things, but then later on, those things are definitely not happening. But again, you get into this sort of form of cognitive dissonance where you're going, but they met this, and the subconscious mind will keep fantasizing about the pulling from the past and projecting onto the future, and it will play this trick on itself. It will go, well, if only I just am good enough or just do things right, then this person will go back to loving me that way that they originally did. And honestly, it's similar to patterns that I would observe with individuals that I helped work through addictions, which is, oh, I'll just do this one last time, or I'll just, and it's all these justifications that take place as a rationale to go back to that source, and repeat that pattern of addiction to, as a subconscious attempt to get your hands on those needs. And then our next one, number 3 here, is the traits, right? So those same traits, like what traits did the narcissist bring into your life? And you'll see from a trait variety perspective, like these things that you sort of become addicted to in that same way, similar to the needs. A lot of the traits are things that you are repressing within yourself that are so important to heal from and to integrate. So these can be things like assertiveness, protectiveness, intensity, fearlessness, charm, charisma, intelligence, success. And these traits are not usually things the person doesn't actually have. These are usually traits that the person is not owning that they have. So you could be really smart, but you are telling the story that you're not smart enough. Or you could be, have the potential for great strength and great assertiveness, but you are actively repressing that trait because you think it's going to get you in trouble or make you bad or get you punished or disliked. So it's interesting. This is sort of a longer topic, is trait integration work. I talk a lot about it in the course. I'm not going to go too far into it right now, but sometimes what you are detaching from in the complex grieving process of healing from narcissistic abuse is you're detaching from the traits your subconscious mind has sort of hooked on, because it's personally disempowered from either owning or expressing those traits in real life. And so you attach to the traits in somebody else. And then when that person pulls away or the relationship ends, you feel like, wait, these traits were helping me. They were helping me survive or navigate. Because you hear all these things, right? It's like when two become one, like in relationships, we attach and we tend to, at a subconscious level, assume that who and what we're attaching to becomes a part of ourselves as well. So we go through this like complex sort of grieving process because we're losing these parts of ourselves to a certain degree. So yet another really important component to pay attention to. The next thing that you are absolutely grieving that needs to be, this is like one of the most important ones, is you are grieving the extent of the lost relationship to yourself. Usually people who get into narcissistic relationships, unfortunately, have pre-traumatic events where they had some sort of exposure to other narcissistic people or trauma or alcoholism or addiction in the home or things that put them out of relationship to themselves quite a bit to begin with. But being in relationship to a narcissist further erodes the relationship to self, because as a subconscious strategy to sort of survive and like keep the relationship alive and be okay, you're often forced to give up your boundaries, forced to give up your hobbies, the things you cared about, your needs, the things that were meaningful to you. And part of healing from that is going back out and finding your sense of self again, and really going into like, recreate yourself, with intention, with care, going back to hobbies that were meaningful to you, reestablishing what your needs are again, learning to meet them in the relationship to yourself. Like these are such important parts of healing, from a narcissistic relationship. And our next one is grieving the fact that you were treated the way that you were. And there's sort of an acknowledgement that has to be done of your own feelings of, because so much, and this is such an important part of healing, is so often when you are in this relationship, you get into survival mode, right? You get into like walking on eggshells mode, super like sympathetic nervous system. And you have to subtly dissociate from your own feelings just to feel okay, right? And so your reticular activating system will actively filter out paying attention to your own feelings, paying attention to your own needs, paying attention to your sense of self and who you are. And, this has to be noticed, acknowledged. It's like, I like to think of a child, and, if you only love your child when they're in a happy mood, you're not unconditionally loving your child. If every time your child's in a bad mood or has bad feelings, you're like ignoring them. Oh my gosh, I don't even want them to be my child anymore. You're pushing them away. That's very conditional love, and that's very harmful. And, individuals who go through this experience of narcissistic abuse tend to be that way in the relationship to themselves. It's like, I can't look at my bad feelings. I don't want to acknowledge that I went through what I did. And it's actually important that you acknowledge what you went through, what it felt like, and get back in touch with your emotions and make them okay, in order to move the needle on your healing journey. And so again, this can be something that's often overlooked. And in the course, I have like a process to take you through to go through that if you want to go a little bit deeper. Because I feel like there's so much in this video. I can't go through it all in so much detail. The next thing is grieving the loss of self-trust. Again, because when you betray your own feelings and needs and boundaries to stay with a narcissist, there's inherently self-trust challenges that will pop up. It's normal. Again, some of these things are usually pre-existing because of past traumas in relationships, but there's so much you can do to just repair your internal trust baseline. It's like, learn to pay attention to your needs again, learn to prioritize them, learn to set boundaries, get into relationship with your feelings and notice what those feelings are and how they're giving you feedback about events. And the more you get into relationship with yourself in these areas, the more you're actually repairing trust. And the more you take yourself into consideration and you're congruent in your life, again, the more you're repairing self-trust. And the last two things are doing some self-forgiveness work. Really, really important for healing. And I've got a good course on that too. I don't mean to just keep pushing the courses, but there's like so much for each topic to talk about. You can check them out literally for free for 7 days. So if anything piques your interest, go just pluck out a course. And the last thing is acknowledging your strength in this experience. I find that so many individuals that come out of these types of relationships develop these belief systems about how I'm weak, I'm not strong enough, I'm not good enough. And a lot of this is like, hey, you have to reprogram those beliefs, and you have to acknowledge like the strength it took to survive, to endure, to and build that self-esteem back by letting yourself understand and through repetition and emotion, through actually reprogramming your subconscious mind, see that somebody treating me this way because of their own trauma. Okay. So the narcissistic individual treating me this way because of their own trauma doesn't make me less of a good person, doesn't make me less of a strong person, doesn't make me weak, not good enough, doesn't make me unlovable. Somebody else's actions do not determine my worth. And somebody else's trauma they're projecting onto me can't take away from my ability to be lovable, to be worthy, to, to be worthy of connection or closeness or, these things that make relationships meaningful as a whole. So really being able to do that reprogramming work is extremely valuable. And these 8 things one by one will help you move through the complexities of grief after narcissistic abuse. So I hope this makes sense. I mean, there's so much more to talk about in regards to this topic. A lot of people have been requesting to share a little bit more content about this because of so many strong links to attachment wounds and how these things imprint the subconscious mind. So I will be sharing a little bit more about this in the weeks to come. Let me know any questions you have in the comments below. And thank you for watching and for being here. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.